Hi everybody, welcome to the dungeon. My name is Robin and today is Flameworking, Explorations into Layered and Stacked Dots. One of the first things I teach a student when it comes to design or patterns is how to add dots evenly every time. And it doesn't happen all at once. It definitely takes a little bit of practice, but once you start practicing your dots and incorporating them into your designs and patterns, hopefully you will get a sense of how much to add every time. With this one, I am just exploring layering or stacking of dots. Of course, at the end, I'm going to be adding a ton of clear just to see how dimensional we can get as well. So with that said, let's get right into it. As always, I hope you're all doing safe and well out there. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope to see you next time in the dungeon. All right, we're going to start things out with a bit of black glass, and I'm going to add a very thin layer, the thinnest layer I can get to the mandrel here. And I'm just going to wrap my mandrel up, making sure that the mandrel is nice and hot where the glass lays onto it. And I'm just going to fill in some areas here where I think I need to. And then we're going to go ahead and roll this out. Again, I'm looking for the thinnest amount of glass that I can get. It will really help in the long run because of the amount of clear glass that we're going to add in the end. It really magnifies it. So the thinner, the better. And I'm just shaping up the ends here. And now we're going to start our pattern off with, we're going to start with white, and then I'm going to get into some transparent colors. But we're going to add a nice big dollop of white glass in this pattern, in the middle and on the ends. And you really want to make sure that the dots on the ends are nice and kind of far apart from that center dot. And this is why, because when I'm heating it up now, and I'm heating up really the ends more than the center. The center will melt in, but I'm heating the ends up first. And I want all of these to become a nice round dot. If your outer dots are too close to your inner dots, they won't become round. They'll start to push up into each other. So keep that in mind. Okay, now that we have this all rolled out and ready to go, I'm going to start layering up my transparent colors. I really love to use transparent colors. And so this one is a nice dark purple. And I'm adding about the same amount as I did with the white. Right into the center. If I want to add a little bit more at the end, I will add just a little touch on the tip. But I am just going to start stacking. So now I'm heating up, and again, I always like to heat up just the ends because as you go to one end and then the other, you're heating up the center. So you really don't have to have your torch just in the center. It's better if you're just heating on the sides. Okay, so here's our third layer, and I'm using the same size glass rod, but I'm adding just a little bit less glass here. These are when the dots start to get a little smaller. And it's just the same thing every time. Adding our dots, gently heating, and then smoothing it down. And with these, I'm not flattening them before I heat because I want them to heat down and expand into each little circle. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so now we're getting into this teal color, and I'm using a smaller or a thinner rod of glass. This is more like a 4 to 5 millimeter, and it's just easier sometimes to get a thinner rod for a thinner or a smaller dot. And again, I'm just trying to hit right in the center of each dot every time. And just heating this up a little bit and getting ready to roll it out again. Of course, you can use any colors you want. I just like to use the transparent colors. I love the jewel tones that they give. And also, I know that they're not going to interfere with the color it's touching. Okay, these white dots here, I am using a pre-made stringer. This is a 2mm stringer, and it's even smaller than, the rod I used before, so it's easier to apply a smaller dot. However, I say this, but however, some people can get large, small, any size dot with a large rod. It just depends on how much you're heating and applying. So this is a good example. I have a larger rod because I don't have a stringer of this green. And so what I'm doing is I'm heating up the end of the rod and letting it kind of drip down a little bit. And that little drip is what I'm touching to the bead to get a smaller dot. All right, I think we got one more to go after this. And every time I'm rolling this out, it's a very smooth and gentle roll. I'm not trying to smash it or, really hard roll or anything. It's very gentle. Now here, the last set of dots, I am using my own pre-made stringer. And this is like a 1mm stringer. And it really helps to get the tiniest dots. You can get even smaller than this because remember, when you're adding a dot, you think it's small, but it will melt out bigger than you're adding it. Okay, the very last one is this gold ruby, and you can see there's a little hook on the end. And that is what I'm using to add the tiniest dots with this large mandrel or rod. So it can be done, but I kind of feel like I could have kept going with this and adding more and more dots. But I'm going to stop here. That's it for me. But if you want to go further, you definitely can. And I'm just going to heat everything up and roll it out. And I'm really happy with the way this turned out. There's so many, like every time, I love the way this looks. Every step of the way I could have stopped. So if you feel happy with what you have at this point, maybe make a whole bunch of these. It's really great for practicing dot placement. Okay, so I thought I'd start adding a lot of clear. And what I'm doing here is getting a very large amount of clear glass hot and dropping it down on each circle. And I get as much as I can, the same amount every time. So I'm really taking my time heating up this glass and applying it. And you will notice that this clear glass does not cover the whole pattern. I don't want the clear glass to touch the other bits, so I didn't press down real far. I just kind of laid it down as much as I could to cover as much as I could cover. Okay, and even this I think looks great. Just having these big clear globs all over this. It looks awesome. But what I'm going to do next is start to flatten all of these down. So I'm going to just hit each one individually and then come out of the flame using my butter knife and just start to pat it down very gently. And as you do that, you can also start to kind of cover the rest of the pattern. So heating and just flattening around the edges. Try not to touch the other clear parts when you do this. This was definitely an experiment. I've never, sometimes I just like to come down here and play around and make stuff I've never done before. So this is just one of those what if I had clear like this beads. All right, and that is how that looks. If you clean this up a little bit, this would be like a really sweet looking bead as well. And that's kind of what we're going to do, but we're going to add more glass coming up here. So to roll this out, I'm just heating up the surface of the clear and very gently, a little at a time, smoothing and rolling all of that clear glass out to where it starts to cover more and more of the color and the pattern underneath. So I kind of start in the middle and work my way outwards. You can start wherever you want to, but I just kind of felt like it needed to be from the center to the out. And now I'm going to work on my edges here. The heating of these took so long. I mean, this bead probably took about maybe about 45, 50 minutes, a little less than an hour. But it takes that kind of time when you're building and building and building. And then the time it takes to melt is, it's a long time. It doesn't happen all at once. So I'm going to just heat and shape up the rest of this bead here. I love the way this looks, you guys. I almost stopped here, but you know me, I had to keep going because I wanted to really see how dimensional I could get this. All right, now very quickly I'm going to do this because I know this is a bit of a longer demonstration, but I'm going to encase this several times. And I'm going to start out by heating up my glass and making sure I have enough to go from one end of the bead to another. And I'm overlapping as I go. And once I'm finished, I want to start cleaning up the ends just to make sure that they're nice and smooth and curved. And, you know, you want to incorporate all that clear into the rest of the bead. So I'm using a little butter knife there on my ends to smooth them and shape them out. And a little bit of rolling on the marving pad is also helpful. Again, this is not the type of bead that I want to just heat and hope that it rounds out. It really needs a little bit of help to round out evenly and to, you know, as you're heating, you're also rolling it, and that rolling will cool the surface down and kind of push the heat deeper into the bead. All right, we're going to finish up this one end here. And you can see the three-dimensional start to grow, the depth. So honestly, at any point, you would have a great looking bead. But let's do this a few more times. Why don't we? Okay, so we're going to do another encasement. And I find it interesting because every time I do an encasement, you know, it changes the whole way the bead looks when it comes to the depth perception. And on this one, I kind of felt like I usually have this rule of thumb where 2 layers of clear really gives you the maximum amount of dimensionality. But on this one, I felt like I needed an extra one at the end. The rod that I was using was a little thinner, my clear glass. A lot of times I like to encase with a 7mm rod, and it gives me a thicker encasement. But I am using, I think, a 6mm rod here. So that's why I'm building this up 3 times. But it really does give me the best dimensional effect. So whatever you decide to do, if you decide to make something like this or are inspired, you can do whatever you want to. Now, if I have an end like this where I want to cover up a little bit more of that color, I'll just kind of feed the glass onto the end there and then start to pull that color in, or the clear in. And I'm just kind of pulling it in with my tungsten pick here, and I'm not worried about ruining the color because it's really deep down in the clear, and I'm not worried about like grabbing it here. It'll come out really nice and smooth. All right, that is one side getting almost finished, and then we will work on the other side. I always find it to be helpful to completely finish one side, you know, when you have everything finished on your bead and added, to work on one side and finish that off and get the shape that you're looking for where it attaches to the mandrel. And then, you know, I'm going to obviously do this other side, focus over here now. And because that sets the ends on the curve that I like, I can spend all the rest of my time here in the center, heating. This segment probably took about 7 minutes to get it to this heat. Okay, now here at the end, when you're making something that's a very large bead, you're cooling it down, but as it cools, you know, the outer skin of the glass will cool faster than the inside. So before you actually put it away, you want to make sure that you give it a good flash on the outside before you do so, and you should be good to go. And on that note, I hope you all enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think, and I hope to see you next time in the dungeon.